4.3 million Filipino-Americans were either born in the US or are reported to have Filipino ancestry. This podcast will feature the Filipino diaspora in the United States, tracing their origin stories and accompanying them in their journeys. Their stories will be as diverse as the dialects and subcultures of the people from across the 7,641 islands that comprise the Philippine archipelago. Some will be inspiring, others pleasant, and a few, well, cautionary. Welcome to 4 Million Filipinos, the Filipino-American experience.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to 4 Million Filipinos. And guess what, Bing?
Hey Manolo, first of all, before you say
Yes.
anything else, old man, let me just greet you a happy birthday, all right? So can
Oh,
we
well,
do this?
thank you
Happy
so much
birthday
for
to you.
reminding me how old I
Happy
am. So,
birthday to you. Happy
okay.
birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
All right.
That was a horrible second
Well,
voice and no.
thanks.
All right. Okay.
I know you wanted to sing today, Ben, but
Amen.
anyway,
Any chance I'll
today
get?
is a special day. You know this
Oh, it
because,
certainly is.
yes, aside
Because
from my
not only are you
birthday,
older, yes,
aside from my birthday, we have a good friend of
something
mine
that reminds me
who
of birthdays past.
Yes. The guest we have today, I've known since junior high school. So that tells you, plus if you add today is my birthday, it's a long time. So, and we are actually, the person we have today is, we normally don't feature non-Filipinos, not because we're exclusive, but that's kind of the topic of our show. But today we have Fay Darmawi on the
Yeah.
show as a guest. And she is one of the producers of a documentary that's coming out. And it's about the Filipinos in San Francisco. And I, you know,
Gee,
I,
there are
the,
Filipinos in San Francisco?
I think there's a few. There's a few.
Yeah,
Um,
just a few.
but we'll have her tell us more about the documentary. But let me just give you her bio. I'm very
Okay.
impressed with it. I had to read it a few times, going, "Wow, she did that," and she did that too. So, Fay Darmawi is a film festival producer, community development banker, and urban planner, interesting in all forms of storytelling and media to create lasting social change. She is the founder, executive producer of the SF Urban Film Fest, a film festival focused on civic engagement inspired by great storytelling. Her 25 years of experience as a leader in affordable housing finance, including managing the low income housing tax credit platform for Silicon Valley Bank, as well as her 5 years of screenwriting and training, informs her media related work. She's a screenwriter and alumni of the Community of Writers at Squaw Valley, a Yerba Buena Center for the Arts Community Fellow, and has recently been awarded, listen to this, a National Arts Strategy Creative Community Fellowship. She served on
Wow.
boards of directors of Chinatown Community Development Corporation, the American Institute of Architects San Francisco chapter, is currently on the board of Livable City, organizing 10 Sunday Street open street events per year in San Francisco. Okay, I had to catch my breath here. Faye is the recipient of the Community Alliance Award for the American Institute of Architects San Francisco chapter, Special Recognition Award for the Accomplished Planner from the American Planning Association, California Northern Chapter, and she has a formal urbanist training from MIT and the University of Pennsylvania. And
Man, that's a
she, I know. Well, let me just close this out. So she has two college age sons, and she lives in San Francisco now, which is of course why we're talking to her, because that's the
mhm.
basis for the documentary. Um, and she is the sole executive producer and one of the producers on the film that we're going to be talking about. And the name of the film, and you have to correct me, Bing,
Bing.
is Sa Amin.
Sa
Is that the way
Amin,
you
Sa
say it?
Amin.
Sa
Sa
Amin.
Amin. It's from
So
our place.
embarrassingly, I don't even speak Tagalog, so I had to kind of throw that
That's
down in
okay.
there. Faye, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sa amin.
Yeah,
Sa
see, she says
Amin,
it
that's
better than
right.
me.
It's very close to
W-
Bahasa.
yes, and you know what? There's a huge affinity for Indonesians among Filipinos simply because, uh, first of all, generally we look so much alike.
Yes.
Well, not that she looks
Well,
like
we're
me,
in the
but
same
she's
neighborhood.
just
You know, if you
way
take a left
prettier
to
than I am.
Singapore, we're close neighbors. So
And well, if you did your social studies, supposedly years back, centuries back, there were land bridges that connected the Philippines and Indonesia. The Philippines as well, just like Indonesia, were an archipelago. So we've got 7,641 islands here. Indonesia has got 15,000 or so, a lot of them volcanic as well. So
holy
a lot
cow.
of things that are very, very similar. Uh, Food, the way that you look, the same love for music. Ah, I can just go on and on and on.
Okay. But let's move forward, shall we? Let's talk.
Yeah,
Faye, tell us
sure.
about the documentary. What was the origin story behind it? What inspired you to do this?
Or let me just throw this in as well. Who found who? Did you find Sa Amin, the cause, or did the cause find you? How did that work out?
Yeah, it's actually like a two-way street. So I had been working with Suma Filipinas, which is the cultural district in the South of Market area of San Francisco, that was created as part of a very focused effort by the Filipino community in San Francisco to create a cultural district and a commercial corridor in South of Market. And I wondered, wow, okay, so they picked South of Market, specifically the area around Yerba Buena. That implies that there's been a long-standing Filipino community there. And in fact, if you look around Soma, you see traces of a Filipino community from way, way back. And also currently, there's a Filipino theater group called Bindlestiff. There's a few streets named after Filipino leaders like Lapu Lapu and Bonifacio. So
Oh,
I was like, there is a story here that needs to be told that is related to the major topic in my life, which is urban planning.
Hmm.
And it relates to urban planning because there was obviously a community that was displaced to create the Yerba Buena complex, which consists of the Yerba Buena Gardens, the Yerba Buena Arts Center, SF MoMA, and the three convention centers called Moscone Complex. So I wanted to find the story behind that,
mhm.
to support the efforts of Suma Filipinas to, to, to use story as a claim to place. So the story would buttress their efforts to reclaim Soma as a Filipino community. Um, and we started off as a 10-minute film, and I was just focusing on the impact of urban renewal and redevelopment when they demolished all the buildings there and displaced all the people, specifically a working class, third world people, and a very strong Filipino community. And then when we started to unearth the archival footage and family photos that Filipino artists and community activists for many generations have been keeping in their safes and shoeboxes, we found a treasure trove of information and interviews, and we decided to bring the past into the present because we realized that the past struggles are still continuing today. Um, every day, the Filipino Education Center is fighting for resources. Right now, the Tagalog program in one of the elementary schools is um, up for non-renewal because
Hmm.
of a lack of registration, supposedly. Um, so so we made it into a 40-minute film and included historical footage as well as current footage of current community activists.
Faye, let me just start off by asking. You spoke of this as you spoke of this in the past tense. So, is there anything else to do? Because it seems to me that a lot of the work has already been done in the sense that well, the Yerba Buena Center is there. So a lot of the families have been displaced. Is it, is it game over for this community, or are you fighting for, that there's a part of that community that still is on the way to demolishing, or on the way to being reinvented, let's just put it that way, at the
Oh no,
expense
no,
of the
no.
community there, at the expense of the community that's there
It's
right
not.
now.
It's not the past at all. It's actually happening right now. I mean,
Okay.
Bindlestiff is thriving. There's a
Okay.
brand new outdoor event venue called Capua Gardens
Okay.
that we actually premiered the film. It's a parking lot that the community took over during COVID, and
Hmm.
with a bunch of volunteers, created an outdoor park and venue. And so now there's all kinds of Filipino festivals there.
Hmm.
There's the night market, Cultivate Night Market. There's also a small business incubator going in and supporting small pop-up Filipino businesses. Uh, there's uh, there's the Archipelago bookstore. There's the Bayanihan House Community Center. There's affordable
Okay.
housing being built. So no, it's happening right now. And
Okay.
then Galing Bata is there
Okay.
at Bessie Carmichael School, which is in Soma. Um,
So all
so
of that is
yeah,
under threat.
it's continually under threat. It's
Okay. All right.
continually invisible for some reason. Even though the Filipino community has been organized for a very long time and created a special youth and family district in South of Market. So even the planning code recognizes this district. The I think that what's happening, and hopefully our film contributes, is that there is a lack of uh, communal
Awareness.
memory
Hmm.
Hmm.
related to the role of Filipinos and their contributions to San Francisco's history.
All right. That's a fascinating thing there, because obviously I think the film, what you want to do is bring attention to the Filipino heritage in that part of San Francisco, in order for that to continue, in order for that to be protected, so that it's not torn down and be the subject of urban renewal. uh and that film brings attention to that cause right now. So you said something earlier which interests me. Why is it silent, or why is there a quietness about what seems to be a burning issue?
Because the narrative of San Francisco, especially in that area, is that that area is a tech and tourist capital of San Francisco.
Okay.
Right? It's right next to Salesforce. It's Moscone Convention Center. People come
Hmm.
to Soma to go to the convention. People come to Soma to go to the SF MoMA. They probably miss the fact that some of the streets are called Lapu Lapu and Bonifacio, and kind of don't really wonder why that is.
People
Why is
gloss
there
over it,
a
in short.
why is there a Filipino bookstore?
Right. Well, there used to be a
Why is there a
Jollibee down there
Filipino
too.
theater? There used to be a Jollibee there. So um, I think it's because of what I was saying before, which is the communal memory, the
Okay.
narrative of that area, of the narrative of San Francisco, overshadows other narratives about San Francisco, specifically about Filipinos in Soma. And then
Yeah.
within the actual Asian American community itself, there's
Yeah.
a othering of Filipinos vis-a-vis East Asians.
Hmm.
Okay, so the dominant Asian community is the Chinese American community.
Hmm.
They're they have there are three Chinatowns in San Francisco, the historic one in Chinatown, and there's two others, Sunset and the Richmond. And even there, they there is the Manila town, right, which is the I
Hmm.
Hotel story. I don't know if you know about that. But even then, so that's the narrative about the I Hotel and Manila Town ends right there. It ends as if the story of the end of the Manongs is the end of the Filipino American
Oh
story in
my
San
god.
Huh.
Francisco.
I didn't
right?
even
It
know
isn't.
there was a
It
Manila town.
isn't.
Yeah.
There was a Manila town. The I Hotel is the International Hotel, which was a SRO that was demolished for building of the financial district.
Hmm.
And there's a really great film by Curtis Choi about it. And it was how the community development movement actually kickstarted on the West Coast. Is this movement to save the I Hotel? It was Chinese activists, it was Filipino activists, it was white activists. It was quite the multicultural activism. But it wasn't ever linked, that story linked to the Filipinos who lived in Soma
Hmm.
until this film that we made right now.
How
Wow.
long did it take you to build to do this film?
Well, it we started right before COVID.
Wow.
And then yes, I know it was terrible. It was
Man.
terrible. Um, So, and a lot of people that we needed to interview were elders. So they were really like, we
Wow.
don't want to be interviewed and we don't know how to do, like, we don't want to be interviewed on Zoom. And we're like,
Hmm.
we don't want footage of interviews on Zoom either. So we waited about a year and a half.
Hmm.
And which is fine because in the meantime, I fundraised some more.
Right.
And then, so we have two co-directors, Nick Gire and Diane Ruiz. And they also had some personal challenges. So that was a setback. But, but
Wow.
really like we had a work in progress screening in the fall of 2021,
Hmm.
and that community feedback really helped us shape the story. We were going to just focus on urban redevelopment and housing, but the community wanted us to focus on everyday life and expand the notion of what it means to have a Filipino community and a cultural district. So, in addition to housing and redevelopment, they wanted us to focus on Galing Bata and the Filipino Education Center, how language is so crucial in um, basically unifying the community and therefore
Yeah.
creating political power.
Hmm.
So we expanded the story to include that as well as some a focus on a young community organizer. So really talking about the future of how this movement keeps going.
Faye,
How? Go ahead,
could
Ben.
you just, yeah, I just wanted to ask, when did this Filipino community begin evolving there? When did the Filipinos come in there? And to your point about what they're doing now, what is the Filipino life in that part of town?
So Filipinos, there have been a couple of waves of Filipino immigration into San Francisco, but I would say like it started off in the 1920s, majorly urban Filipinos. But they didn't just live in Soma. They also lived in the Fillmore and the Bayview and Chinatown.
Okay.
And then there were a second wave in the 50s and 60s, and those were professionals.
Hmm.
And right now there is a lot of Filipinos who are in government, a lot of
Yeah.
Filipinos who are in the arts, but also a lot of Filipinos who moved out of the city. Right, so there's a lot of Filipinos in Daly City, for example.
Of
Oh,
course.
that's
There's two
Yes, yes,
Jollibees in the Daily City.
yes. Yeah, so there's a it's the American dream. Like you come
yeah.
here and you work
So
hard and you want a single family home, so you move out of the city. But everybody still comes back into San Francisco because this
okay.
is still the cultural hub.
Right.
So in really the Filipino story there in that part of town is actually over 100 years old. If the wave of migration started in the 20s, so it's 100 years old now. It's that, how many generations is that? Wow.
Yeah, at least
Lots.
3 or 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Man.
That's an.
yeah.
I didn't even
I'm
know
learning
that.
so
And
much already. Just I had no
And
idea,
there was a lot of
honestly.
intermarriage between Filipinos and African Americans and Chinese
yeah.
Americans. white Americans.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Fascinating.
mean,
Amazing.
Filipino culture is basically American culture. Like the Grammy winner, her, I think she's half
Yeah,
Filipino and she
That's
grew up in
right.
yeah, she is. She
Vallejo.
is.
Yep.
Yep.
And then that teen
Those are the
one
places
that
that
came,
are.
Olivia, is it?
Olivia,
Yep.
right?
She's straight up Filipino.
She's straight up
So
Filipino. There you
that's
go.
right.
And I think
There's
Yeah.
she's from
that.
here
There's.
too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Hmm.
what's amazing to me is your what inspired you to do the story also kind of mirrors what you went or what you're trying to identify from in your life as well. I don't want to get too personal, this is really about the show, but you know,
Oh yeah, no, it's actually very important because
yeah.
how do you sustain 3 years of a movie that you don't really get paid to do, and no one on the movies on the crew really didn't get paid to do? I mean,
Yep.
like this just bare bones budget, but it actually it's a passion project, like everybody else
Right.
says. And where does that passion come from? The passion comes from your personal experience of that relates to the experience that you're trying to tell, the
Hmm.
story that you're trying to tell, the story that I was trying to tell. So my personal experience of being othered and being made invisible was my personal background as a Indonesian of Chinese descent. So
Hmm.
like what I was telling you guys, my actual name is not Darmawi. It's actually a Chinese name, Ui. And the Indonesian government made us all change our Chinese names to Indonesian sounding names
Hmm.
to trace our identity completely. So, but my dad, as a form of resistance, kept the phonetic pronunciation of our last name, Ui, and put it on the back of our name, Dharma. So it became
Hmm.
Darmawi. So every time
Yeah.
somebody had to call out our name, they would have to say our Chinese name
Wow.
Yeah.
inadvertently.
Well done.
Wow. That's the way.
Well done.
We're not gonna spell it, but you're gonna say it.
Right. Which is, and then they don't even know that they're saying it. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, ha ha.
We
Right.
live
Anyway,
on.
so
Man.
so these forms of resistance, like even this film is a form of resistance.
So
Yeah.
Faye, what's the film is supposed to bring attention to the issue.
The
What's the
issue
end
being
game? What's the end game?
the end game is that there is tech boom, real estate fueled speculation, buttressed by public policy around urban planning and zoning
Yeah.
in South Market.
Hmm.
And the movie actually goes over a period during the dot-com boom where the city basically looked away at instances of illegal displacement during the dot-com in Soma. A lot of Filipinos were affected by that, and they're still looking away now. And it's going to be interesting to see what the city does, because during the pandemic, this tech companies basically abandoned San Francisco, right? When it
Hmm.
wasn't fun anymore, they left.
Right.
So
Typical.
we gave them these tax breaks, the Twitter tax breaks. I don't know if you remember that, but like 15
Hmm.
years ago, that's how we like seduced Twitter to come to San Francisco. I argue that they would have come anyway.
Yeah.
So here we spent our public dollars to attract Twitter at the expense of many working class Filipinos who have been contributing to San Francisco all this time. And during COVID, who stayed were the essential workers, the Filipino nurses, the
Yeah.
Of
Filipino
course.
delivery boys, the Filipino teachers, and who left, right?
Right.
Tech left.
Hmm.
So there is a moral argument about the re-examination of who gets benefits, public benefits, public attention in Soma going forward. We have to make sure that is equitable development going on in Soma. There's more attention for affordable housing, more attention for affordable services, more attention to open space for families, and more attention to services for seniors, for youth, that then services and tax breaks for tech companies
Wow.
or
Right.
anybody else.
Yeah. Well,
It
how go ahead.
I'm just reminded of something similar here right now. There's an ongoing discussion, let's just put it that way, about work from home, and many of the BPOs. The Philippines is it's a huge place for
Mm-hmm.
BPOs,
Yeah.
and for the longest time, throughout most of COVID, many of the BPOs were given the freedom to work from home.
What are
Now,
BPOs?
sorry, business process outsourcing, so call
Oh,
centers
okay.
Call
essentially.
centers. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was that at some point the government said, "All right, to help the economy, we're gonna have to ask you to move back." And then some said, "Well, no." And said, "Well, if you guys are not coming back in, we're gonna take away all the tax breaks that we gave you."
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, "Well, yeah, go ahead because we'd rather keep our people happy, and if doing so means that they're staying at home, then we'll do away with the tax breaks because we want to keep people employed and they feel safe. They feel safer working at home." So, in that sense, I can see a parallelism that you know
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a city may, or a government may tend to bend over backwards to attract tech, to attract industry, and sometimes you negate the fact that really your place actually is attractive enough and they don't need all of these perks to begin with, and that
Yeah.
speaks to that cause of yours, because you're saying there's so much public dollars wasted in trying to lure these tech companies. They would have been there because San Francisco is San Francisco. It's just a cultural melting pot, and you couldn't have thrown that all that money. Really, they would have gone there anyways.
Yeah. Absolutely. I wanted to ask, as I saw the screening, there was this discussion about the two kinds of Filipino personalities, which I agree with. I wanted to kind of verify with Bing is, being an American Filipino, it's a little bit different, right? We're more outgoing. We're taught to question things. Like when I worked in the Philippines, I noticed there was this cultural never question your boss, or
Mhm.
don't don't be outspoken or anything. So, when I think about this, and when I saw the screening, it was like, how do you take the, I wouldn't say timid, but the culture of the Filipinos to just like stay small and not to be, you know
Not to rock the boat.
not rocking the boat, and then suddenly you see like these fighters come out, right? Is that really how it is being? I mean,
I'll ask that from a different perspective, because I'm really glad that Faye is taking up the cudgels for this, because obviously it is now that I'm seeing this. I've been to San Francisco, I've been to California a number of times, particularly growing up, and I've not been, and I've spent so many summers there, but I've never been made aware that there's actually that place uh, growing up. But for it to be a center of Filipino activity for the past 100 years now, wow, I'm just terribly impressed, and I'm glad that Faye, you're taking the cudgels for Filipinos in San Francisco. My question is, related to Manolo's question on Filipino timidity or passivity. How is the community taking up this cause? Obviously, you will have some activists, but generally, do Filipinos in the U.S. or in San Francisco, one, is it an issue to them?
yeah,
Two, do they even care that this is going on? Let's start with that, and then let's work on the passivity or the timidity.
They definitely care.
Okay,
Um,
good.
Representation on all levels. They the Filipinos are fighting for representation in the arts, representation
Okay.
in education, representation in politics, uh, building more affordable housing in working class Filipino communities and working class communities, period. Um, definitely building up small businesses,
Good to
supporting,
hear.
yeah, supporting each other in everything that they do. Even the Filipinos in tech, like Manolo,
Hmm.
and we've met a few here too, who are trying to bring this film into their into their office, basically.
Yeah, into the consciousness, the general consciousness of the Filipinos in the Bay Area. I'm
Was it
glad
hard to
because
get them to talk and to share their feelings and emotions?
Oh,
Or
that's a really interesting, Manolo. It is. It was very difficult
yeah.
for some of the elder Filipinos. Not all. Not there's a few that are very outspoken. MC
Hmm.
Canlas and Ron P. Muera, but for the everyday Filipino, they're like, who's gonna care about my story? I
Right.
just it's like, I mean, yeah, I get, yeah, I mean, my housing is precarious. Why is that very special? Why do you want to know? Like, why should I tell? Why? Who's gonna
Right.
want to hear
Am I
my
going to get in
story?
trouble? What am I going to, right?
Yeah,
How did you
like,
get them
well,
to
not so
talk?
much. Well, we got them to talk because I guess we tried to make them see that it's not very unusual, their story, and that sharing their story will help inspire others to also speak up. Because if you don't speak up in unison, no one
Hmm.
is going to pay attention to you. Even if we spoke up in unison, even after we make a film, it's going to be an uphill battle
Right.
because what are we talking about, right? We're talking about things that are that don't actually like bring a lot of that much revenue to the city, right? Because the city is really always just looking for a lucrative tax base.
Hmm.
But 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 it's a chicken and an egg thing. Why do companies come into San Francisco? They come for the culture.
Right.
So if there is no culture, why would they come?
Makes sense.
yeah, yeah, that's true. And I'll just go in and answer that. At least my view, the passivity or the timidity that they speak about, Manolo, maybe, and I'm saying maybe here, it's partly to do with the fact that in a new place, part of the Filipino psyche will be to adapt.
Yeah.
So it is not so much that you want to change it. Part of it is that Filipino Filipinos in the states, I think a number of them will really identify as Filipino-Americans, and probably for some, it's that Americanness which leads to say, all right, let's not do this. It is what it is, and you know that's just part of being an immigrant to this place. So we gave up that whole Filipino-ness when we
Yep.
moved over here. So that's probably one reason why some people will say, "Well, it's not so much." But I'm really glad to hear that people are now beginning to identify with their Filipino-ness apart from their Americanness, because right now it's important that people don't lose that part of their culture, because I think that's part of what makes you you, and that's an important part of what you bring into the United States. You bring in you're an immigrant country. I mean, let's people forget that, but it's really an immigrant country, and you every immigrant group brings in a certain flavor that makes your country what it is,
Hmm.
and to negate that, to lose that, to surrender that to the general Americanness, it's sad if that happens, because what it lessens what you bring to the table, really, to me.
Yep. Yep. Well, let's bring it back, Faye, to what you're doing with the support our story. crowdfunding and everything. I know that last time I looked, actually, I'm looking right now. You're at 76% of your goal. So you're
Yes.
trying to raise. It says 20,000, but you have a stretch goal of 35, right? Something like that.
Yes, yes, yes. Actually, we're more than 75. We just got big matching donors.
Great.
We're actually at 18,000 of 20,000.
All right, at the finish line
And
then, almost.
yeah, we're almost at the finish line for the 20,000. We'll probably make 20,000 tonight at our screening at the Roxy. So then the rest of the week we'll be fighting to get to the stretch goal uh, um, of 35,000. So the support our story is kind of like GoFundMe.
Yeah.
It's a it's a new platform run by two Latinas in Los Angeles,
Mhm.
Hmm.
and just to make inroads in the people of color sort of platforms. So we're helping them out in terms of trying out their platform. So yeah, support our story, and then you go to Sa Amin, which is our specific
Yeah.
campaign, and we have like different levels. It starts off at $5, and it ends at $1,000. At $30, you get a 30-day look at the film. You get a little link for yourself. At $150, you get your name as a credit on the end credits of the film. $500, you get a personal viewing with a few of the filmmaking crew. So check it out. And then on Thursday, we actually have our final access to the film, which is a virtual screening on Zoom. And I don't know how do you send us the
Well,
link?
I'll put the links in the podcast description. So when we
Yeah.
post
Oh, okay,
this,
great,
people can
great.
just read our description. You can click on these links, and it'll take you to all the sites and the support our story site too, so you can contribute. Um, when it comes to what are the next steps, like, so once
Yeah.
you get the funding, are you getting into a broader distribution, or what's your plan for the
Yeah,
film?
so the first chunk of money goes to fund the difference between a 10-minute film and a 40-minute film.
Hmm.
Basically, the
Okay.
filmmakers have been working for free for now. And then the stretch goal will allow us to go back into post and um, hire another editor and do a little bit more shooting, and then do a legal review, and then submit to film festivals.
Cool. Are you gonna like send it to Netflix or Amazon too? I mean,
Maybe, probably
yeah.
not, but who knows? Who knows who's watching? Probably it'll go to like ITVS and KQED public
Hmm.
television first.
Faye, who's been supporting the film?
I mean, like, it's surprisingly a very mixed bag of Filipinos, young community developers, which is a African American led organizations in the
Hmm.
Bayview, um, filmmakers, urban planners, basically our crowd, the SF Urban Film Fest crowd, which is
Hmm.
a mismatch of artists and filmmakers on one side and urban planners and architects and public policy people on the other side, which is the origin of the SF Urban Film Fest. Is basically a reflection of my background,
Yeah.
mashed them
Yeah.
all together, and really wanting to use film and storytelling to demystify and educate people about the urban planning process, and also empower communities to participate in the urban planning process, because it's a very technocratic system that has huge implications for inequality and injustice. For example, real estate speculation fuels displacement, right?
Hmm.
Real estate speculation is buttressed by the zoning framework. So if
Yeah.
you don't understand that, then you can't fight it. And it's very like technical kind of information.
Yeah.
But the non-technical part is telling your story about how you've lived here for many generations and have contributed to the strength and vitality of San Francisco as a Filipino community.
Hmm.
You
you
can't,
mentioned
you cannot ignore that,
No.
you
right?
cannot.
And testimony, you can't.
Yeah.
And that culture, the culture that the Filipinos have been bringing to San Francisco, is part of the reason why it is an economic engine.
Mm-hmm.
If you take that away, what do you have? You have just vapid
You have a tech
businesses. Like
bro
who?
neighborhood, is what you have.
You have a tech bro culture, which is,
That's right.
I don't even know what that is.
It's what Austin is becoming.
It's like a non-culture. It's a
Yeah.
culture of people working till 8 o'clock at night
Yep.
and not being in the city.
You get byproducts like Elon Musk. That's what you get,
Mm.
right?
Or I mean,
To your
he's
Twitter
basically not
story,
a.
I mean, I can't even tell you. But I think, that they're getting their comeuppance now. Like they're getting hit pretty bad. So, you know, maybe they'll start thinking about things in a different way. I don't know. Who knows? It's all about the
Uh,
money, I think, in this case.
But
I'm, I'm,
who?
I'm, yeah.
But who actually generates economic vitality? Right, 60% of all jobs are small business jobs. They're
Hmm.
not large corporations. So, because we haven't been supporting small businesses, when the pandemic happened, everybody was decimated. We did not have the programs to help small businesses.
Right. They're caught.
Now we see, oh my God, we've been neglecting our 60% of our economic base. Duh.
The
So
face
are
the
are you saying it
60%
took
because
COVID to make
yeah,
them open their eyes? Like
Yes.
they realized, crap. Yeah.
yeah,
One of the
because the
few
big
good
boys are
things that
gonna
came
up and
out of that.
go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's still a
You
ways to
said
go.
Faye, you said that many of the support for the film has really come from essentially your crowd. The artists, the urban planners, and all that.
The
So you were saying that
storytellers.
the
Yeah.
storytellers.
Filmmakers
How
too.
yeah, the
Filipinos,
filmmakers. Yeah,
Filipinos.
that's what I wanted to get at. How have the Filipinos taken ownership of this project?
Well, the two directors of Filipina,
Okay.
and then our impact producer, Suma Filipinas, the Cultural Heritage District. But yeah, so actually, that is a conversation that Suma Filipinas and SF Urban Film Fest will be having in terms of like, what is the impact campaign going forward? How are we going to
Yeah.
leverage this film going forward?
Exactly.
We have so many sub stories that came out of the story that we
Hmm.
couldn't fit into the film. There's so much more footage and so much like little mini stories. What should we do with those? And then there's a whole archival project that's happening that's outside of this. We did use
It's
some of the
amazing.
archives, but this film is so archive heavy. It's very inspirational. We can use the film to inspire more Filipino families to bring forth their
Yeah.
own collections of stories and archival footage. There's it's a rich treasure trove that is yet to be tapped. SF Urban Film Fest, because we're not Filipino, because we don't have any Filipinos on our board, we don't feel like we should be going forward in terms of hosting those archives. We can be sort of helpful in terms of being the producers or filmmakers to help tell those stories, but always there's going to have to be a Filipino director,
Yeah.
Filipino composer. The Filipinos are going to have to play a big part in
Yeah.
making sure the content reflects the experience.
Yeah. They're gonna
But
have to
at the
get
same time,
they're gonna have
I'm
to get
really
involved.
glad. Exactly, and they've got to take ownership of this because it's the Filipino story it's the Filipino American story that you're telling. It's the Filipino American heritage. It's the Filipino Americanness of that particular place that you're trying to save and you're trying to protect. And really, that to me is that to me is an important consideration, and that to me is really the end game. What are do the Filipinos actually want to even protect that? And I'm not asking that
That's a
individually. I'm
rhetorical
asking as an
question, isn't
entire.
it?
Yeah, no, because it goes back to your question earlier. Is the passivity or is it the timidity, is that drawn because they just don't want to rock the boat, or is it because it's not an important issue to them? I've seen the footage from earlier, and it seems there definitely are activists in that sense. They feel very strongly, they feel very passionately about uh, preserving the heritage there. And knowing that there's so many Filipinos in the Bay Area, I just wanted to find out whether the general populace of Filipino Americans there feel strongly about this as well, and have they put their dollars behind the movie to show that they actually support it? That's the kind of question which I'm also interested in finding out, Faye.
I mean, there's some Filipinos backing the movie.
Okay, good to
Whether
hear.
whether I'm hitting all the big hitters, I'm not actually sure. But the Filipino community in San Francisco are not just wanting to preserve the heritage, but they're really evolving the
Okay.
contemporary Filipino art scene. Like Ruby Ibarra, she talks about her life, and she talks about her being Filipina, and she talks about being a young person in America, being a woman of color. So there's an evolution of definitely of Filipino culture that is very, very strong, right here in San Francisco in the Bay. Fashion, uh, music, um, jewelry, uh, theater, a little bit of film, dance, definitely contemporary dance. That's
Oh,
Filipino.
Reminds me of that guy who's actually a pretty good dancer. This guy named
Don't do
Manolo
it.
Almagro.
Stop it.
Yes,
Oh
yes.
boy.
We need to get him.
Let's continue to talk about this film, shall
Yes, okay.
we? Faye, I'm looking at the clock. I don't want to. I mean, I know you're busy. I know you took time out of your day. We have a few minutes left. Can you give us your last
Yeah,
thoughts? And you can tell people how to find you if they want to help out. I think just go ahead and take the last 2 minutes, and you
to
can
plug
close out
away.
the show for us.
Yes, please. So, what the closing thought is that the film is part of a larger strategy for
Mhm.
all cultures, all communities in San Francisco to use, which is story as a claim to place.
Hmm.
There is the Latino community, the Japanese American community, the African American community, and now the American Indian community, who all have contributed to the creation of this place called San Francisco, but who have been neglected by public policy. Is there a way where film and storytelling can be part of a political movement to reclaim their spaces, to claim spaces, to build new places, and connect the past, present, and future? So, this concept of story as a claim to place. I think this film and our collaboration with the Filipino community, who are so open hearted to try this innovation with me. I mean, it was
Hmm.
completely untested, right? And it was so hard to find people who wanted to talk about it. And there's no data whatsoever of Filipinos actually having lived in Yerba Buena. The city actively decided not to do any censuses to make sure that we did not know who actually lived there when they
That's
demolished it.
crazy
So
and
that also
wrong.
happened I know, in the African American community.
Yep,
So this thing continues as probably a strategy to inform urban planning going forward, inform urban development going forward, inform real estate speculation, inform how the city invests in communities and businesses. Who do they prioritize? So that's what I'm interested in, and that's why we leverage the power of storytelling. So if you want to follow us specifically for Sa Amin, we have a website. It's called saaminfilm.com. And then if you want to follow SF Urban Film Fest, we are sfurbanfilmfest.com. We're also at SF Urban Film Fest on every social media platform.
yep. Your
Wow.
Instagram's pretty good too. Follow the Instagram.
Yeah, the Instagram is SF Urban Film Fest.
All
Well,
right.
I
Wow.
really appreciate you doing everything. I mean,
Yes.
the things that you're doing are amazing, and thank you for doing that. Thank everyone that's behind the film. I hope that our listeners hear this plea and support the film and contribute and donate to support our story. And I'd like to say thanks again for joining us today. Faye,
Thank
Yeah.
thank you for
you.
taking time out of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me go on and on.
No, it's
No, no,
great.
no,
We
no, no.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know what we
I
should
see.
do? I think we should get Jollibee involved. Bing.
Yeah.
That's what
Yes.
I'm going to
Yes.
do. I'm
Definitely.
going to call some people
Yeah.
up. We
Yep.
should
Yep.
definitely
Yep.
do that.
Cool.
I actually wanted to say that, if at all, if as a next step for those of you who are, who are on the fence or undecided about what to do as a next step, just watch the clip that Faye has put together, because from that short clip that I saw, it's riveting, and you get a sense. The title is Sa Amin, and it means from our place. You really get a sense of, wow, there's an ownership that we should cling to. And if anything, as a first and necessary step, you just want to watch the clip. You just want to watch that first few minutes of that film,
Yeah,
because I think it is an eye opener that, yes, there is our heritage, there is our culture, that's our story that's probably never been told. That, sadly, as Faye says, it's seemed to be whitewashed, and
literally.
we have to claim that story, because really it's part of the growth of the city. You
Yes,
cannot tell
exactly.
the story of San Francisco. You cannot tell the story of the Bay Area without the Filipino component. Uh, you know, I've seen enough of that growing up and visiting, that that is an integral part of it, and we have to be the first ones. It's the Filipino community, particularly there. You have to be the first one. So, if at all, if anything, just watch the first few minutes of the clip, because that will change
Right.
your
The
mind.
trailer is on the website, the saaminfilm.com website.
That's great.
All right.
That's great. Okay, well, thank you so much, Faye. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Faye.